I messaged Dan too to see. I just said, "Can you hear us?"
You're behind me in high school.
Okay.
And then I believe I go by as, when I'm driving to our lake place.
So I was thinking that, we always do Pledge of Allegiance.
I've seen him once.
And especially in this COVID, Zoom or WebEx or whatever, virtual environment.
All right, folks, I think
we could get
ready to start up here.
Elementary school students to.
Ready to start. Apologize for the tardy starts. We had to make sure we had a flag so we can say our Pledge of Allegiance. So I think we got that up and running. It is 5:34 p.m. And this is the January, I can't really say February, 25th edition of the Moorhead City Council meeting. And Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Shelley Dahlquist.
Here.
Matthew Gilbertson.
Here.
Shelley Carlson.
Here.
Laura Caroon.
Here.
Deb White.
Here.
Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Steve Lindos. And then Mayor Jonathan Judd.
Here. Can you please rise and restate the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, folks. Good evening, everyone. I am Mayor Jonathan Judd. The Moorhead City Council is holding its regularly scheduled meeting using virtual meeting technology under an emergency declaration due to COVID-19. I am in the, well, I guess, yes, we are in the City Council chambers. However, we are live and direct from the Heritage Yimcomp Center, and I believe this is the auditorium. I'm sitting in our chambers, if you will, with the city manager, Madam City Clerk, City Attorney, Councilmember Shelley Carlson, Council members Larry Seljevold, Councilmember Matt Gilbertson, and the other the council members are attending virtually. We also have a few members of staff here as well. Any public comment received prior to this meeting will be read as part of the record during the applicable agenda item. The public may participate during the meeting by calling 218-299-5001. Public input will be taken by a staff member and provided to me to read during the meeting. Or you may request that your call be bridged through or to the virtual WebEx meeting and speak directly during public hearings or citizens addressing the council agenda item. Again, the public comment line number is 218-299-5001. If there's not an answer, please leave your message or callback number. A member of our staff will return your call as soon as possible. With that, folks, we're on agenda item number 3, agenda amendments. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Hearing none. Item number 4 on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I'll ask City Manager Molly, any council members, are there any items that were removed from consent prior to the meeting tonight?
No items have been asked to be pulled from consent.
That'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, did you get that? Okay, I heard Councilmember Carlson make the motion, and as far as a second, I did not catch that.
I mentioned it, but I don't know if I seconded it.
I heard 2 names or 2 people, but I couldn't tell. So will Councilmember Seljevold?
I'll go with Seljevold.
I apologize. I'll try to, this is new for all of us here, so I'm going to try to get my screen, which I normally would have there. All right. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam City Clerk.
Dahlquist.
Yes.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Carlson,
Yes.
Caroon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seljavold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Lindos.
Yes.
Motion passes. Move on to item number 5, recognitions, presentations. 5A, presentation, Clay County Public Health. I believe we have with us tonight Ms. Kathy Mckay and also Mr. Chad Stengland.
Can you hear me? Across.
Yes, I think, let me check. For those attending virtually, can you hear Mr. Stengland? I'm seeing nods, so I think you're fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you to City Manager Molly for allowing us to come up here and do an update presentation. Myself, my name is Chad Stengland. I'm the Division Chief of the Moorhead Fire Department, but I also serve as the Emergency Manager for the City of Moorhead. And so I appreciate taking a few minutes of your time tonight to be able to kind of give you an update on the vaccine process and where we're at in conjunction with our partners at Clay County Public Health. As emergency managers, we deal with a lot of the planning, preparedness, response, and recovery of incidences. And with that, it's been very taxing dealing with one in every 100-year pandemic. But we're normally used to dealing with emergencies and disasters. I can talk to the fact that every emergency and disaster is contingent on your collaboration and your partnerships within our community. I think Moorhead has a good example of that. We've had a long history through all the federal floods that we've had, that it highlights those partnerships within our community. And the fact is that we know those safe and effective responses are a partnership amongst the whole community. Tonight we'll talk a little bit about how that partnership plays out in this pandemic. Most events are all local, but one thing that's different in a pandemic is you're looking at a worldwide pandemic hitting all across the country at the same time. We're used to dealing with a disaster to where either it's a community or a region that gets impacted, and you can flood that with local resources and additional support from the federal, state, or local governments. You know, in a pandemic, we're going to talk a little about some of the challenges with that, because most of your main leaderships that we're used to seeing, whether that's an update from our Chief of Police, Shannon Monroe, Chief Dyson from the Fire Department, or Bob Zimmerman during a flood, you know, those people are normally city resources, you know, leading that fight towards that event. A little bit different in fact that as a pandemic, the city plays more of a liaison, a support role in that type of event. But that doesn't mean that we don't work in close partnership with Clay County Public Health and those other health agencies. And so tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about how this has played out during the pandemic. And so with that, I want to first say our Director of Public Health is going to be speaking here for Kathy Mckay in just a few minutes. I want to first acknowledge their efforts during this whole pandemic and amount of time and effort her and her staff have done a courageous job. When you're talking about something that doesn't happen one in every 100 years, you don't have a lot of experience and a lot of bandwidth to understand all the complexities. And every pandemic is different. And so with that, we're all learning as a country and as a world how to handle this pandemic. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Kathy Mckay of Clay County Public Health to go through some of the details.
Thank you, Mr. Stengland, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and other officials. Thank you for allowing some time to talk about the COVID information, as well as our vaccination update and where we are at with all of that that's occurring right now. Clay County Public Health works in partnership with Minnesota Department of Health, so we're partners in this effort, state and local, to address this pandemic. And we also rely on a lot of our partners, of course, locally, And as Mr. Stanglin mentioned, I mean, he's a key partner for us as, representing the city emergency manager. And we have other partners throughout. It's not just, public health just doesn't do this in a silo. We work with many partners. We work with our healthcare facilities. We actually are working across the river. We are part of that Red River Valley Task Force, which is nice to work together as a metro area, because this pandemic, there's no borders to this. So we're working all in tandem, and we're trying to keep information flowing, how our response is, communicating the data that's occurring, and all of those things. So we really have great partnerships, both locally, regionally in Minnesota, with the state, and also with our North Dakota partners on the other side. So some things are different and some things are similar, but we're working on this all together. I want to mention that the site we have been allowed to use with the city's permission for vaccination is awesome. We think it's a great site. We had some other options in our community, but this just fits the bill for what we're doing right now, particularly when we're just doing priority groups. So we have specific registration, and just priority groups are being notified as required by the governor of Minnesota, and also with the Minnesota Department of Health. So it's really great, and we are grateful and we appreciate the use of the site to provide vaccinations to our residents in Clay County. I'm not sure if the slide do you know if the slide, oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so what I'll do is provide just some information on just a report. Let's see, if I know how to work this. The next slide. Oh, there's the vaccination site that is just for priority groups right now. It is not a public site. It is based on registration that we send out. We send links to those priority groups and are able to use that site. The next slide, I just put some numbers when we talk about the number of cases. It might be interesting to note that, and these are cumulative cases now, this is for COVID, and we have Clay County cases are 6,606, and then Minnesota COVID cases cumulative, so from the beginning, are 455,783. We look at the deaths. Unfortunately, every death is significant. We have 84 in Clay County, total cumulative deaths at this time. At the beginning, we did see a lot of deaths in the long-term care residents, senior individuals, and now there's deaths throughout age groups. In Minnesota, there's over 6,000 deaths. The out of isolation means they have had a positive COVID and they are now recovered or out of that isolation period. So we have 6,000 out of the 6,606, we have 6,329 out of isolation. In Minnesota is 439, 283 out of isolation. So our active cases right now is 136. That's pretty low in comparison to the numbers we've seen. We haven't seen that number low for quite many months. And so this is good to know that our active cases are remaining low. And in Minnesota, there's still 10,402. So we're not out of the woods, as we say. We're still watching that because we also know the virus can evolve, and there's variances to this. So we still need to continue with our public health messaging as we're working through vaccine distribution. The median age of cumulative cases, as you can see, is 33. So that's pretty low. We're seeing a variance of ages, and in Minnesota it's 38, so it's pretty close to the same. Our cumulative, hospitalizations, 271 in Clay County and 23,932 across the state of Minnesota. Now those hospitalizations include the Clay County residents. We often see the majority of our Clay County residents on the North Dakota side in the hospitalizations, but some also can be hospitalized throughout the state of Minnesota. Now, the nice thing that as of the last few months, our hospital systems on the Fargo side are not overwhelmed with cases in ICU or hospitalizations of COVID patients. And they also are at a pretty good capacity with their staff. For a while, they were quite short-staffed, but it's manageable now. So that's also something we want to keep in mind as we're looking at the cases. So hospitalizations are manageable. ICU admissions, 74 cumulative for Clay County, and almost 5,000 in Minnesota. Now we'll talk about as we look at the vaccine. So the number of residents in Clay County that have received one dose of the vaccine, both vaccines that are out are 2-dose vaccines. It's 2,204. Now that number doesn't look very high, and it is not. The distribution of vaccine in Minnesota has been very limited. For Clay County, part of the reason is we don't have a hospital in Clay County. The hospitals received quite a large proportion of vaccine. So we don't have that vaccine distribution to hospitals in Clay County. There's also been a lot of federal distribution to communities that have tribal nations, and we don't have that as well. So the number is really low. We'd like to see it higher. We're working with MDH. The distribution is the delay. There's both distribution from the federal side to the states, and you'll see if you look at across the nation, there's many states that are talking about the low numbers of vaccine that they're able to get out or to receive to get out. So we're really working hard, and we're working with Minnesota Department of Health, and the governor hears us loud and clear. You know, we need to get more vaccine so we can get it out to the people. The distribution for Minnesota is 266,985, and again, that's a distribution that's low as well. So those that completed the vaccine series in Clay County, 302, and in Minnesota, 67,436. So Minnesota was supposed to receive 871,650 doses. They did not receive that many. Their dose shipped to Minnesota providers was 529,375. And then there was some shipped for long-term care, 153,300. So they're short a couple 100,000 doses approximately that was expected, but was not shipped. However, Minnesota, the percentage of doses used is still at 49%. So across the state, it needs to be distributed more. In Clay County, Public Health has distributed 1,050 out of that 2,204. The rest of that vaccine, CVS and Walgreens distributed to long-term care and assisted living facilities. That was their mission, to distribute to those. We distributed to others in the phase 1 category. And the phase 1 category included other healthcare workers, EMS. There's 3 priority groups in phase 1A, and we're still working on phase 1A groups. We need to complete that. We're working on the 3rd priority, which is congregate care. Some of the congregate care facilities, we have a lot of corporate foster care, group homes, mental, behavioral health, mortuary staff, school nurses, dental offices. So we have a large group still to vaccinate. The number of vaccines we've been receiving, shipments have been anywhere from just 100 doses. I think one week we received 500 doses. We have the capacity, we have the number of staff that can do it. We have partners that have reached out to us. Higher ed have offered to have student nurses assist in that vaccination process. We have 2 clinics that have offered to assist as well. So it isn't about the capacity, it's about the number of vaccines that we're not receiving. The requirement now is to get vaccine out once it's shipped to us within 3 days. And Clay County Public Health has been doing that. We get the vaccine out within 3 days. Nothing is being saved. We're not, there's no vaccine to be sitting around. So we're really following the guidance that MDH has requested of us. So we're getting vaccine out as quickly as we get it. Once we get it within a week, we set up the vaccine clinics. So the 1,050 doesn't sound like a lot, and we could do a lot more. So we continue to push for more vaccine this week, starting tomorrow. We have more doses that we can distribute. And so we're hoping to finish up our phase 1A third priority. We have between 800 and 900 doses. So this is the largest amount in a week that we have to distribute vaccine. And we are scheduled to get that out. By the end of the week, we'll be completing those 800 to 900 doses. So, and we hope to continue to get shipments as we go. So, it's hard. We understand that we get a lot of concerns from the public and people with high risk health conditions, those that are 65 and older, which the governor, of course, has expanded to that group as well. But there's just not enough vaccine to get to everyone. So we're doing the best we can. We're getting it out as quick as we can. We're going to utilize partners as we get more vaccine. And so we're just asking the community to be patient. We can only do the vaccines with what we receive. So we're a little bit behind in getting more vaccine out. So not getting vaccine out, but receiving vaccine. And then the slide that calls the cases reported by week, so you can just see the dates on there and how many cases per date of the test were reported. So we see the big surge of cases, of course, ramping up in October and November. It's just kind of showing the number of cases since March. So we are seeing that uptick, but now we're seeing some decline in that. The next slide is number of, I'm not sure where
Getting some feedback, and also, can we get some assistance for Director Mckay for the slides?
There we go. Okay, so deaths per week, so it's showing the number of deaths and the weeks that we really saw some spikes in deaths early on, as you can see in March and April, May, and then some decline, and then a little bit of an uptick again in deaths, November and December. In the bottom of that slide is cumulative age cases by age group. So as we talked about the cumulative age group, you're seeing, the largest spike in some of those younger age groups, the 20 to 24, 15 to 19. This is the cumulative from the beginning. And then, of course, in the 25 to 29 and 30 to 34. And then we're seeing the next slide is, maybe I'm not putting it at the right location. There we go. Active cases by age group. So you can see the number of active cases currently. So those are our current active cases, and the number of age groups. So you see still a large portion of active cases, the 15 and the 19-year-olds, 20 to 24, 30 to 34. So a couple of our larger groups. The end of that, the second slide is just showing hospitalizations and ICU hospitalizations over the same period of time, and the increase and spikes in some of that, and now we're seeing the decline again. So those are just a quick overview of some of those statistics that we continue to follow. And so we're really fortunate to have the low number of cases that we're seeing right now. Our 14-day case rate is at an all-time low, 14-day case rate per 10,000 people. That's at 36.15, so that's really at an all-time low. We're working with our K-12 schools, we're working with higher ed, meeting weekly to just review data, looking at their learning models, et cetera. So we're at a good point. So our push is just to get the more vaccine And again, we know that's going to be a challenge for a while, but we're hoping for more. We still have the saliva testing site in Moorhead, and so that continues every week. We are fortunate enough to continue that after December. There was enough available funding that the state has allowed that semi-permanent site. So we're still seeing 2,000 to 3,000 folks getting those tests every week. So that's good, because the testing, isolation, quarantine is still necessary until we really can get this vaccine out in full force. And we also have, through public health, case investigators and contact tracers, so they continue to follow, provide information to individuals that they're following as far as isolation and quarantine, which still can be confusing for some. So those are being followed, but thankfully those numbers are also low. So I think that may conclude my report. I would entertain any questions if you would have some.
Will do. And what I'll do is, I did see Councilmember White's hand up first, so we'll let her go first, and then Councilmember Gilbertson. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the information, and it's great to see all the work that's getting put in place so that we're ready when we get those vaccines, and we're starting to get them out there, but obviously we still need a great increase in supply. But in the meantime, we know that the most important thing is preventative work, and it's a little concerning that our region is still trending ahead of more populated areas such as the Twin Cities in terms of the 14-day average number of new cases per 10,000. And so any thoughts you have on what we could be doing just to really push that, the need to do that preventative work so that we can get those numbers down while we're waiting to get a more full access to the vaccine?
Thank you for the question. We continue to push the preventative measures, obviously the social distancing, stay home when you're sick, the masking, avoiding large crowds. Sometimes what we're seeing is people become complacent, and we did see some of that over the holiday, that there's people that are still gathering, and we're still recommending that not to have large multiple family gatherings, and that's unfortunate, even for weddings and funerals, that it's happening out there, and we are really stressing the importance of continuing, although it gets tiring, people get tired of isolating, it's tedious, but we really want people to make sure you test if you're feeling ill, make sure you maintain the isolation and quarantine that's needed, wear your mask, social distance. So those are the only measures we have at this point in time until we can get the vaccine fully distributed out to our communities. So it's going to be a number of months. I don't want people to be wondering why the vaccine is not getting out in a couple months. This is going to be a bit of a long haul. We know that the mass distribution will take a while, so it's still a number of months where we have to really follow the guidance and continue to practice what we've been doing for all of these months.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Also, thank you again, Ms. Mckay. Councilmember Gilbertson, you're up, and then Councilmember Lindos, then Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Mckay, for your information today. We know you're going above and beyond what you weren't expecting to have to do in 2020, but I've got a question, and then I've got a comment that doesn't necessarily need to be addressed tonight, but I would like somebody from Clay County or MDH to get back to me on that. How did Clay County MDH come up with the 6,606 positive cases?
All of the cases that are tested in residents of the counties that goes up, to MDH. They track all of the cases. Public Health has access to that as well. So we have access to all of those that are in Clay County. And so we can follow the cases from when they were tested, when they, and then their positive test, when that result came, and then how long their isolation period is. So that listing has been ongoing since the beginning of this pandemic. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question. So my comment is, since June, I've been doing COVID-19 antibody tests. And since October 1st, I started reporting the positives and negative information to MDH. There's a website that I go on, enter all the information, and I have not seen any of that information published. So in the last 2 weeks, my positivity rate is 63% of the people I've tested positive for COVID-19 antibodies, and only one of those are in the 6,606 cases. So it's small, 10 to 15% overall. So over the last, since October, cumulative, we're at 33%. That means 1 in 3 Clay County and Cass County residents have been exposed to COVID-19, and 80% of those numbers are not in the 6,606 numbers. So it's way, way more people are affected. If you extrapolate out in Clay County, that's 20,000 residents. And you guys are showing 6,606. So I've been putting the data in, but nobody seems to talk about antibodies. I understand that they're concerned that they don't last. I understand that. But we had one gal that was sick in February, test positive in June for antibodies, and then again in October. So that's 8 months of an antibody response. And vaccines are the same thing. They're going to produce antibodies and produce immunity. So my question that I need answered at some point in time, why are those numbers not included in the narrative of this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, and I don't know if I can answer your total question. The positive cases that the residents of Clay County in Minnesota, but Clay County in particular, if they've been tested at one of the healthcare systems, those test results go to Minnesota. So they receive those at anyone that's been tested through Sanford and Essentia, and those, of course, tested through Public Health Lab, those that have the home test kits, and those that the saliva testing. I know that the number is not an exact science because we don't get negative tests from the North Dakota Public Health Lab. That's a number that they don't have a system that can provide that to us. It was more of a hand tally. So we're not getting we know that the percent positivity rate is off a bit because we're not getting those numbers from the Public Health Lab. How many of those tests we aren't sure. So that doesn't totally answer your question. I'm not sure about the ones you're talking about, but I would certainly be happy to follow up.
Well, and what you're talking about is the viral antigen test. I'm talking about the antibody tests.
Yeah.
Like an example, I had a family of 4 that were quarantined due to close contact with, close contact. They went and got the swab test January 12th. Mm-hmm. Tested negative, all 4 of them. 3 of those 4 tested positive on the 13th for antibodies. So they've, and they had both antibody measures, both antibody M and G. So the reason they were negative is because 3 of them have already had it. And I report that information to Minnesota Department of Health, and they don't talk about it. That's where my issue is with, probably more so with Minnesota Department of Health, because that number should be, we need the whole picture. Mm-hmm. Knowledge is power. And finally a couple weeks ago, when Dr. Ostrom was talking about the new variant, mm-hmm. He says, I quote, "We need to just pray at this point that vaccine-induced immunity, and to that degree, previous illness immunity, will provide protection against these particular strains. Prior infections matter. Mm-hmm. Antibodies matter." So as many tests as I've done since October, it just seems like it's going nowhere. And That's, I guess, as a private citizen in Clay County, that's my frustration.
Sure. And yes, I totally understand that. The antibodies that are produced once you had the illness, you know, the period of time that they're, of course, the experts are saying is 90 days. So in 90 days, if you've had an infection, you've obviously have some antibodies, it should be good for 90 days. That's their best scientific evidence. Now, the antibodies can last longer than that. We know that people have antibodies beyond those 90 days. And so if you, for sure the 90 days are kind of the time frame for those with infections, but it can last longer than that. I know people that are doing convalescent plasma, and they're providing their plasma to give to those folks in the hospital that would need some plasma to develop some antibodies. And some folks have been 6 months with antibodies that are still viable to give plasma to provide to hospitalized patients. So that's just a little bit about what the information in regards to the antibody time frame. But we do know that there's some that will have antibodies longer than 90 days, and some may even be shorter than 90 days. We don't exactly know. They don't. It all depends on some of the bolus of the infection you received. There can be some a real big and those that develop illness too. Why are some people extremely ill? Some of it is their health conditions, some is the amount of virus that they were exposed to as well. So I understand that's not your complete answer, but I can certainly follow up with my contacts at MDH.
And I'll interject here just because for the sake of time and we can move the conversation forward. I think with those questions, I think can be directed to Director Mckay. Regarding your questions, Councilmember Gilbertson, for that data and information, I just think that probably, since she doesn't have the information to answer the question, we should probably just go ahead and move forward. And then if you have the ability to do that, Director Mckay, go right ahead and you can respond to Councilmember Gilbertson directly.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Councilmember Lindas, Councilmember Hendrickson, and Councilmember Carlson. Councilmember Lindas, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor Judd, and thank you, Director Mckay. Information is actually really useful.
One second, we're having some really bad audio here, so hold on 1 second. Let's get that fixed. And then also, for council members that are attending virtually, can you hear Director Mckay well? I know that one council member said that the volume is low from chambers. Can I get a head nod if you can hear okay? Okay, 2 thumbs up. Councilmember Dahlquist, are you able to hear okay?
Yeah, we can hear okay. It's the volume is low compared to others that are virtually online. So I think it's just a bug we'll have to work out.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So, all right, so we can get the audio fixed in here, because I couldn't hear Councilmember Lindas at all, and I think we're all in the same boat. So let's make sure we get that fixed first. I apologize for the pause here, folks.
Do you want me to do a test audio?
Actually, that was better, but still low.
Still low. Usually people don't accuse me of being quiet.
No, we know better than that, Councilmember Lindas. Let's make sure. So City Manager Molly's out with Madam City Clerk to figure out the audio issues. So this will be hopefully a couple seconds here. Yes, that's fine. Councilmember Carlson, let's get, since she's present and the audio and the audio is fine here, we'll start with her so we can keep things moving. Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Mckay, I have 2 questions actually, just to help provide more information to the public. What is the next group after phase 1A? What will that group encompass? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll go on to the second question.
the specifics of 1B. That would be the next group. So once we finish 1A, and again, for the public, also, the governor had added groups like the 65 and older, and E12, so early education through 12th grade in schools, their staff, and licensed child care providers. So those are additional groups. We're not initially in 1A priority groups, but he added those in addition. So those are not 1B either. They're just an additional group. So Minnesota Department of Health has still yet to determine what 1B will be. They will be getting that information to us in the next weeks, is what we've been told. So the priority group of phase 1A needs to be completed. And then in addition, as vaccine allows, to also do the 65 and older in the schools, in the child care providers. So there's a lot of folks that need to be vaccinated in those priority areas, and then Minnesota Department of Health will determine what the next round will be, and they have not informed us of that yet.
Do you know how many people approximately are in the group 1A in Clay County?
I couldn't tell you the total number, but I know we have approximately 1,200 left to vaccinate in 1A. So that's a large group still. We have a lot of congregate care, group homes, et cetera. There's a lot of people to vaccinate yet. So we're hoping to get the majority of those done this week.
Wonderful. And then my last question was, I know that if you go on certain websites of MDH, that they have these sites around the state of Minnesota. I know one site is in Fergus Falls, another site is in Thief River Falls. Can you explain the difference between who needs to go to those sites versus who would come here locally to get that versus having to drive to a different site? I think that can be a little bit confusing.
Yes, thanks. That's a very good question. They did set up those sites across the state of Minnesota in hopes to kind of push out, redistribute vaccine to those sites and push that out to those that are the K-12 or E-12 and the child care providers. Their hope was that would also assist in getting vaccination out. There's been some glitches in those sites for registration. The registration is taken through the state, and I know there's been some issues because of the low number of vaccine that they still have to distribute out. So it was pilot sites to see how this would work to get more vaccine out to folks, but there isn't additional vaccine, it's just a redistribution. And I know the numbers of vaccines for schools are pretty low. They're very low numbers for school staff to go to, say, the site in Fergus Falls. So I would say as a trial period, they're trying this to see how effective this will be. I'm not sure that this will be sustainable, but that's just my thoughts at this point in time. But those folks will send information out to those groups. It will not be to the general public. They're not taking walk-ins. You have to register via a link that the state sends out to get, and so each of the schools and each of those other groups will get a link, and then they can register for that site.
Thank you so much, Director Mckay.
And Councilmember Lindos, I think we have the volume as high as we can get it in here, so we're going to give it a run and see what happens. You're up.
Okay, and I just in case this doesn't work, is this better?
It's as good as it's going to get, so no worries. It's not you, it's us.
Okay, so Director Mckay, I guess I want to thank you for your work. And you mentioned coordination with North Dakota and Cass County in particular. And that cross-border coordination is critical, I know. But does this coordination extend to sharing doses for vaccination completion in groups? So if we're done with 1A or they're done with 1A, will they share doses across the border?
Thank you for that question. No, that's unfortunate that North Dakota has their doses, and they are, I'll have a caveat too, they're providing just to North Dakota residents, except if they're in a hospital system. So if we have residents in Clay County that are working in those healthcare systems, that'll be vaccinated through those healthcare systems, those will not show up on our numbers either for vaccination because they're using the North Dakota distribution, the vaccine through North Dakota. So we know there's folks that work on the Fargo side of the river and West Fargo. They're getting their vaccinations potentially through their healthcare, particularly the hospital systems, and maybe in public health and family health care, some other settings. But the vaccine, the sharing of vaccine is not allowed at this point in time across state lines. So that's the unfortunate. We won't be receiving any vaccine, any extra vaccine from the healthcare systems on the other side of the river.
Thank you.
And then Councilmember Hendrickson, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
We're having the same, I think this is just going to happen from a virtual. We'll get it fixed by the next meeting.
Okay.
Not a worry.
And thank you, Director Mckay. It's nice to talk to a Warroadite. Kathy and I are from the same town, so. By the way, hope Warroad beats Rosa tomorrow. I just want to throw that in. You said 2,000, you're testing 2,000 per week. Is there, and you said you had funding rolling over. Is there still, is there still enough funding for testing? Because I know testing is going to, contain this thing. And we need testing more than ever right now. Even if we do have the vaccines, testing will just track everything. And I think we've been doing a good job. But are we fully funded for a while with the testing?
And I'm sorry, I missed some of his question. Did someone hear it more than I did, that they could repeat about the testing?
I think he was asking if it's going to be fully funded for a while.
Oh, the testing site, the saliva testing site?
Yeah, that's what I was
Is it
wondering.
going to be fully funded?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Oh, yes. Yes, actually, that is being provided through the Minnesota Department of Health. They also, if anyone's been through that testing site, they also will bill the insurance of those individuals that have insurance. There's no out-of-pocket cost for individuals, but they will bill the insurance in order to continue to provide some funding for that site. So we don't have an end point that we have heard of yet for that testing site. So it continues with the funding that they're able to receive through the Minnesota Department of Health and through those insurance companies that they are getting the reimbursement from. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and like I said, thank you for your work. I don't know if you can hear me, but thank you for your work on that testing site with the saliva test is great. It's it's easy for kids and everything else. So, but I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that testing site has been an asset to our county, who was short in the ability to get some testing done.
Councilmember Seldervold, your hand is up.
Well, I know 3 Clay County residents who have got vaccinated, but because they work in a healthcare system over there, so their number's not on there. But if you got the first dose, is there a risk that the second one will be delayed at all?
What we are receiving right now is we are receiving second doses in public health. So they're sending us second doses and requiring us to save those for those that have already received their first dose. They know the numbers of our first doses. That's through public health. So we have some vaccine that we've received for second doses. So they're affirming to us that they will be continuing to send the second doses. That's the best I can say. We're getting some vaccine for our second doses, which we started the beginning of January, that first week. So our second doses are coming up first week of February. So they've sent us a portion of the doses that we can use for second doses. We're hopeful that we'll be getting more for that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or comments to make? All right, well, thank you folks for the questions and the dialogue also. And Director Mckay, I want to send a special shout out to you as well. You know, since this went down, I know that you've had a lot on your plate, but I want you to know that you've been a great communicator and a great advocate for Clay County residents and working with the governor's office, MDH, and beyond. So, you know, you are truly a rock star, and we're grateful to have you as an asset here coordinating this effort. So keep up the great work, and thank you again.
Thank you. Takes a team, so I want to make sure that, yes, it's the whole team and community partners. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, that takes us to agenda item number 6A, the approval of the minutes from January 11th. That's a typo, but it's 2021. Meeting minutes, 5A.
Steve Lindos moves approval of minutes.
That's Councilmember Lindos making the motion.
I'll second it, Deb White.
I heard Councilmember Gilbertson first. So, or did you hear differently?
I got White.
Oh, you got White? Okay, then we'll go with you since you're the official record keeper.
And I just want to start 2020 over. That's why I did that. I want to just redo 2020.
Yeah, I'm sure we all feel that way. Any further discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none, Madam City Clerk.
Dahlquist. Gilbertson.
Aye.
Carlson.
Yes.
Caroon. Aye. White.
Yes.
Seljevold.
Aye.
Hendrickson.
Aye.
Lindos.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item number 7, citizens addressing the council. City Manager Molly, Madam City Clerk Rust.
Not aware of any citizens that are on the line to address the council tonight.
All right. Then that takes us to agenda item number 10, food forest at MB Johnson Park. I believe Mr. Wise is going to present this. Trent Wise.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Trent Wise. I am your Moorhead City Forester. I am here tonight to provide an informational briefing on a proposed food forest at MB Johnson Park. Do I need to aim this anywhere in particular?
That's a good question. I'm going to hand it off to someone that's an IT savvy person. Does he need to point it anywhere, or should it just pick up anywhere?
Right at the screen. Yeah.
Oh, he's shaking no.
Doesn't seem to be.
All right, folks, hold on 1 second. We have our IT.
Oh, what am I?
Mr. Reddy's on the scene.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Perfect. How do I go back? Perfect. Thank you.
Good to go. All right.
All right. So tonight what I will be discussing is how the project came to be. I am going the wrong way and I can't go backwards. Got it. I got it. All right. How the project came to be. The project itself, what a food forest is, the location for the food forest, some of the maintenance that will go along with it, the benefits that it will provide to the community, some possible future events that could be held there, and some survey results that we obtained for this project.
want to just say next slide, I'll
Next slide.
forward you through.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Next slide, please. All right. This is a pilot project developed by the Resilience Task Force, who has a goal of developing long-term community-based and proactive responses to climate change in order to reduce vulnerability and reinforce the strengths of people, infrastructure, and institutions. This Resilience Task Force is made up of 19 local organizations, some of which are the city, Clay County, Concordia, MSUM, River Keepers, and others. This project was proposed by an ecosystem service work group, which is a working group of the task force, and it meets all 3 criteria of the ecosystems work group, which is biodiversity, land use management, and river quality and quantity. And when we were meeting as a work group, we found out we were going to have some funding available to do a project, and we thought about how do we enhance our ecosystem to create a more resilient Moorhead. There were several suggestions as part of the work group, but what we ultimately settled on was this food forest project. The project itself is a food forest, which is composed of trees and shrubs planted at MB Johnson. It will be open to the public for enjoyment year-round, including the harvest, once the plants do bear fruit. As part of this project, we would like to have the plants installed on Arbor Day and have a planting project involving Moorhead residents. And the food forest will be maintained by Moorhead Public Works and possibly some volunteer groups moving forward. I should note that, which I briefly mentioned, but this project will be funded from grant opportunities obtained through the Resilience Task Force. Well, what is a food forest? A food forest is a diverse mixture of edible plants that, once established, will produce food. You may have heard some of these other projects. They're also called forest gardens, edible forests, and you can also call it an orchard. It has many different names. The main thing is you have a public food in a public space, and there will be a variety of plants that will be planted, and I guess the only thing we're limited by is what will actually grow here. So what we're looking at is apples, pears, plums, apricots, service berries, honeyberries, and aronia berries, but there are other options as well that if this is successful and we look to do this at other places throughout town, we could diversify and use other plants as well. When we settled on the food forest, there were a couple of variables, a couple of things we wanted to look at for a site to do this. One of them was we wanted a place large enough to where we could install an actual forest. So what we're looking at now is, I think 100 trees and 20 to 30 shrubs. And we also wanted a place that had higher elevation. So a typical flood year, it wouldn't affect those plants or that forest. We had a couple locations throughout town, but we ultimately thought MB Johnson was the best. And along with having this large open area, there's also many other amenities that MB Johnson has. It has hiking and biking trails, a boat launch, has playgrounds. People go there to snowshoe and ski in the winter. It also has facilities with water and restrooms. We thought all these things would make this a great site for the food forest, and that the food forest would enhance some of these areas as well. All right, so here is the proposal for the food forest. You can see it's right next to that first parking lot, and the bike path is on the southwest side of the proposed site. This is important for access to some of these plants, and all these plants will be spaced 25 to 30 feet apart so that maintenance can be performed in between. When they're installed, the picture on the right is basically what it'll look like, there will be fencing around, like a 5x5 square fencing around each tree to protect the tree against rabbits and deer, any other animals possibly. There will also be a tree guard on, and probably some wire mesh around the tree to help protect it from voles. This design is not set in stone. We are looking at possibly trying to include a path through the middle for even better access. But yeah, we'll see where that goes, I suppose. Maintenance. This will this will be more of a natural area. It won't be an entirely natural area. The park there at MB Johnson is currently mowed every 10 days. We're looking to mow it every 20 days, maybe every 30 days. So it will be more of a natural area. The trees will need to be watered once a week for the first 2 years. So Forestry Division will take care of that. And the trees will be pruned every, they'll be on a 3-year pruning rotation for the first 10, 15, maybe 20 years, and the Forestry Division will also do that. This 3-year pruning rotation will ensure proper branching and structure to maintain the trees in the landscape for as long as possible. Some benefits of the food forest. The main benefit would be open access for all community members to gather healthy foods. It will also enhance the appeal of MB Johnson Park. It will provide for community involvement, specifically with the installation of the trees, that opportunity for the community members to get involved. It could create educational opportunities in a couple ways. We're looking at obtaining funding to get educational signs put up throughout the orchard, and we are also it could be used from K through 12 students and also college students. It promotes the outdoors. There's the obvious harvesting of fruit in the fall once the trees bear fruit, but in the spring, when all the trees are in bloom, it provides for great opportunities for families to get out, enjoy that, take photographs, and those sorts of activities. And it also feeds valuable pollinators. Some future events that we're looking at, like I've mentioned a couple times, is the Arbor Day event. The Arbor Day event to install the plants. There's also potential for fruit tree pruning and best management practice workshops. This would be a great resource for community members who are seeking to better understand how to prune and care for fruit trees. It's possible that if this is successful and there's demand, that site is big enough to where we could have future additions out there as well. And once the trees do bear fruit, there are opportunities for park and rec events out there as well. To gauge community interest, we set up a survey on the City of Moorhead's website. I'm just going to go through that briefly here. We asked 3 main questions. We had roughly 350 participants. We asked, do you support the community orchard? You can see there's nearly 300 people that had strong support. Another 40 had somewhat support, and I think it was 10 people combined that had neutral support, somewhat opposed, or strongly opposed. For potential benefits that people saw, pollinator habitat was the highest. People also thought it would be a great source of local food, community involvement, and people also thought that it would increase visual interest for the park. We asked people if they would use the orchard. Actually a little over 300 said they thought they would use the orchard, and right around 25 or 30 thought they would not use the orchard. We allowed space for additional comments in our survey. We had 44 comments of support, 20 comments expressing concern. The 2 main concerns were wildlife, how the trees would be cared for, and to make sure that the wildlife wouldn't negatively impact the trees. And then the other main concern was maintenance, just to make sure that the trees were properly cared for. We did have 32 other comments. Those comments, 9 of those comments were additional plant type varieties that people recommended. Couple comments for volunteer ideas, 13 comments for additional locations throughout town where people thought this would be a great idea, and then 9 other miscellaneous comments. With that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wise, for your work and for the research. I think there will be some questions or comments. Councilmember Carlson, and then if we can get the screen switched so I can see the council members again, that would be good, because I can't see their hands if they're virtual.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just go ahead while we're getting the screen up. Thank you, Mr. Wise, for that presentation. This is a very exciting opportunity for resiliency in Moorhead. I know personally I'm very excited about the best practice workshop because I planted 2 apple trees, and I don't know what, I have a lot of questions, we'll just say that. So the top 3 concerns, you had said wildlife, maintenance, and I forgot to write down the third one, but can you just quickly address how you would be addressing wildlife, maintenance, and the third one?
Yeah, so for wildlife, we would be putting those fences up like in that image you saw. They would be on the trees at least until they bared fruit. Of course, there is a lot of wildlife up there. So the main focus would be to get the trees established and in the landscape so that they could withstand some wildlife abuse. Because we're not going to be able to keep the wildlife away forever. So I guess my goal would be to get them established so that they're tough enough to handle some of that wildlife that would be browsing on them potentially. Maintenance, I guess the maintenance, like I said, we would water once a week for the first 2 years just to get them established. Beyond that, they should be able to fend for themselves. And forestry division will prune them every 3 years. That should help, get them established. Aesthetically looking a little better as well, but having that proper branching and structure. And once we'll be mulching around them as well to reduce any vegetation competition that they may have with grasses and weeds.
And then what was the third concern?
Those were the 2 main concerns.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And that's Councilmember White, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Wise, for the presentation. I really like this project. I'm on the Cass Clay Food Partners group, and one of the concerns that was raised was just about accessibility of MB Johnson. And so if you think about this could be a way of helping to meet the needs of folks who are dealing with food insecurity. One of the downside is it's at a park that is less accessible to than some of our other public spaces here in Moorhead. And so could you talk a little bit about that? And would there be a possibility of looking at, in addition to this, maybe having a smaller site that's more centrally located, splitting up some of those trees and putting some here in town where people could have greater access, and I could see even tying it in with some community gardens on some of our public spaces that we have down, towards our urban core.
Yeah. So to the first part of that question, I'm not entirely certain. It is possible that we could work with certain church groups, other groups to maybe help get people up there. But to your second point, yes, if it is successful and there's demand for it, I definitely see it going in other locations, which would help more directly with that issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Lindos, I see your hand was up first, and then Councilmember Gilbertson, you didn't? Okay. Councilmember Lindos.
Thank you, Mayor Judd, and thank you, Mr. Weiss, for that presentation. I guess I'm also very excited about the opportunities and prospects of having a community garden, mainly for a lot of the educational opportunities. And so I thought I would give you a chance just to highlight those a little bit about some of the ideas for, not just pruning workshops, which I also could very much use tips and pointers, but also kind of what I would say K-12 opportunities for potentially, teaching or showing our children where food comes from, but also different varieties of food like arona berries, which I don't know how many people know what those are. Do they taste good? Are they sweet? So I guess I was curious about more education.
So I'm not. This is part of this presentation that I guess I don't know a ton about. So I'm not too certain. I know. I guess staying in my lane, it would be an excellent education opportunity for if we were to get students involved with the Arbor Day project to teach them how to plant trees, how to do that properly, and maybe how to maintain those trees. But as far as the educational aspect of it, I guess I'm not too certain. I would need to consult with other individuals that have more knowledge in that area.
You could just defer and say the Ecosystem Services Group has a whole bunch of people from the education community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Karoun, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor. So, question for you then is, how soon before these trees really mature enough and bear fruit for the community to harvest? And then, are there ways that we can keep folks excited about this project in the meantime? This is really kind of a future-focused project. So what are the ways that we're thinking of to keep people excited until those trees fully mature?
Yeah. So we're planting a variety of trees. We're planning on planting apple trees that have semi-dwarf rootstock. This means that these trees will bear fruit sooner. They won't be as long-lived at the site, but this goes to your point of trying to keep interest. Unfortunately, it could still be 3, 4, 5, 6 years before some of them bear fruit. We are also planting trees that have standard rootstock. Those trees, it will take longer for them to bear fruit, 8 to 10 years, but they will be in the landscape for 75, potentially 75, 80 years, where the semi-dwarf rootstock trees would probably only be in the landscape for 20 to 30 years. How to keep folks interested in the interim? I guess I'm not sure I have a great answer for that. I know some of the shrubs we're planning on planting out there, the service berries, aronia berry, or chokeberry is another name for aronia berry, and the honeyberry, they should bear fruit in 1 to 2 years. There are also some issues with that, with birds potentially poaching the fruit before humans get to it. But I mean, we could always put things on social media once the trees do bear fruit, try to drum up interest that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Seljevold, sorry, you had your hand up.
This sounds like a really exciting project, and it's pretty neat. One, I hope this is successful, because I know in my neighborhood, I see some area that gets mowed, and I'm thinking, boy, they could save a lot of time if they just planted some trees there and stopped mowing it. And so I hope it's successful in that, even if at a neighborhood park had 2 apple trees that people could just grab, I think it would enhance those parks. And I see in the word pollinators. And there's a guy in my neighborhood who used to be a beekeeper, and he told me, he said, could you get the city to stop mowing along the river so close and let that clover, grow up so that the bees can get at it? And so I'm throwing that out as a citizen asked me to pass it on. And but I think this is a wonderful project. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing, hearing none. Mr. Wise, again, thank you. This is a great project. It was great to read your report and your presentation. I think this is really exciting, and hopefully we'll get some collaboration with community folks. To Councilmember White's point regarding accessibility, I think there's some creativity we have within our residents and our local institutions to try to figure that out. But honestly, great work and a great project. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hi, folks. That takes us down to, I believe, agenda item number 19. Missing one? 12, my bad. My apologies. Oh, sorry, I accidentally marked right through that one. 2020 development report, and that's pretty important. City Planner Christy Lashowski, thank you. And my apologies.
Mayor Judd, members of the council, I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. Within your packet and on the city website under the business tab, studies and report, there will be a 2020 development report. This report provides updates on things like building permits, incentives, new amenities, and what to watch for in 2021. A few highlights of the 2020 report. In downtown, we saw completion of the downtown plan, which was a huge accomplishment. We also saw a number of projects that were either starting or finishing that you'll see noted in the report, including the Simon Warehouse, the Van A Mixed Use Project, Block 37 Flats, 12th and Main, and the Armory Event Center. I also want to point out a great milestone that we saw in 2020, which was we reached the halfway mark to the 500 housing units in 5 years goal. In 2018, the City Council recognized the importance of having people downtown for our businesses, for our activities, and we just reached the halfway point to that in 2020. For commercial, we saw throughout the city commercial and institutional projects accelerating. We saw over $24 million in new commercial and institutional building value added in 2020. A few that you'll see mentioned in the report: Solutions Behavioral Healthcare Building, the new Muscatel Collision Center, and the Krebenhoff Real Estate Team bringing back to life a great building down on 8th Street South. We also saw residential housing units increasing in 2020. We saw 206 units in 2019, 231 units in 2020, thanks to our local builders and FMHBA. We also saw multiple strategic priorities for Moorhead in 2020, including the Moorhead Cares Small Business Relief Grants related to the COVID pandemic and a number of legislative funding successes. Folks that wanted to get outside saw a new Southside Dog Park, as well as completion of the downtown and Homestead trails. I'll also mention that Midtown Trail, which will go from Woodlawn to Gooseberry, is next on the docket with anticipated legislative approval in 2021 with construction soon thereafter. I just want to conclude by saying thank you to our Moorhead residents, businesses, educational institutions, and stakeholders, and everyone who showed our Moorhead's strong resiliency in what was a very difficult year. We want to continue accelerating all these great projects into 2021. And my last note, I will just invite everyone to the Onward Moorhead Virtual Community Workshop, which will be this Wednesday at 5 p.m. Check out the City of Moorhead website for more information and links. And with that, I will open it to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lashewski. Any hands? I see Councilmember Caroon. Oh, your hand just went down. Councilmember White, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mayor. And I was not going to let you get past this one because reading this report just made my day. I loved it, and it just shows what an exciting time it is for Moorhead. And the fact that we had all this growth during the pandemic is really just a testament to the exciting things that are happening here. My only question that I had is really more of a comment. I wanted to touch on the First and New program that's it's discussed in the report, and I know we've mentioned this before, but it notes in the report that we did not get any applicants in 2020, and I think it's just maybe this is really the time to revisit that, much like we did with the storefront rehab program, and you know, that was something that was used for revitalizing older commercial buildings. And I'm just wondering, with this First and New, that now might be the time to look at, instead of only narrowly focusing on new construction. If we could expand that to allow it for first-time homeowners who are looking at fixing up some of our existing homes, as particularly in the downtown area, and that, you know, those folks are also dealing with special assessments, and this might be something that could make home ownership more accessible to them. And again, it brings more families to the downtown area and helps with that, with our downtown development plan. So I just wanted to say, I really think this might be the time to just look at that, of seeing how we can use that tool more effectively to address some of the plans that we have going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Anyone have any comments or questions? I think for the only thing I want to just highlight, I mean, honestly, Ms. Lashevsky, you've done honestly great work in being involved in all the pieces of the puzzle here. For those folks at home, I just think that just this one paragraph is really important. That Moorhead added over $24.5 million in new commercial and institutional building value in 2020, more than doubling the investment from 2019 and resulting in 13 new commercial and institutional buildings. And I think that is a testament to a lot of the work that city staff has been doing, really to cultivate an environment where Moorhead is becoming more and more successful in that area, as well as residential. So I just want to say that that's really a testament to city staff, the leadership that we have here, and council being on board to let staff do their thing, and it's paying off and paying dividends. So thank you, Ms. Lashevsky, for your work in this team process, and look forward to 2021. That's for sure. City Manager Molly?
I can't help myself. I tried to stay quiet. I did my best. But you'll notice Christy used the word accelerate maybe 2 or 3 times. That's what we're talking about on staff. We want to give anyone that's working on these projects an opportunity. Well, not the opportunity. We want them to know that we're hungry. We want to know that we're going to offer certainty when they bring a project in, and we are not putting up obstacles, but offering alternatives in partnership to get this stuff done. It was a difficult year for development. If you looked at these numbers in April and May, halfway through the year, there was one point I was really wondering. But everybody turned it on, and it's a great time for Moorhead. So when we say accelerate, our benchmark for that is look at 2019 and 2020, and we'll be back next year in 2021, and we want to see that block get bigger and bigger and bigger. So just want to thank everybody, from the residents to the business owners to the staff that's working to help connect the dots when these proposals come in. And yeah, it's just a very exciting time for this sort of work. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, well, thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. I think that, make sure I didn't mark anything off inadvertently, and I think that does take us to agenda item number 19, mayor and council reports. I will defer to council. Are there any reports anyone wishes to make? Councilmember White. Oh, Councilmember Hendrickson. Well, wait. Now the hands flip-flop. So you took your hand down and put it back up. So Councilmember Hendrickson, you're up. Then Councilmember White. And then Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you. Just we had an MPS Moorhead Public Service meeting last Tuesday, and we were in a discussion of past due counts, and from last February we went from 672 million to date we're 1.9 million now with past due accounts. So the number of accounts isn't growing, just the amount. So I understand that Mayor Judd and City Manager Molly and Manager Travis Schmidt and Christine Thompson, you've been meeting to discuss how we can work those things out. So, and we're looking at every possibility to get those bills paid with payment plans, and still looking for assistance agencies. So it was a good discussion, and you know, what I know, the city and MPS are working really closely in this situation. So it's a good thing. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Hendrickson, Councilmember White, then Carlson, then Lindas.
Thank Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple committee reports and a couple of other things from meetings recently. One, I mentioned I was at the Cass Clay Food Partners meeting, and we had a presentation from Great Plains Food Bank, and just looking at, again, issues related to food insecurity in our community. They reported that the need for food assistance is at a 39-year high, and they've seen a 45% increase in client need during the pandemic. And so, you know, just thinking about the needs for that. And one of the other issues that came up is that is the need to look at this in terms of comprehensive planning. And in fact, both Clay County and Fargo are looking at how they can integrate this into their upcoming comprehensive planning, and that's something that I would recommend that we do as well. I had a meeting with Emily Baltima from the Alzheimer's Association, and who asked us to put together a team for Moorhead for their walk for Alzheimer's, to support efforts to end Alzheimer's. And so I did mention that I would ask the council and mayor and staff if they would like to put a team together, and perhaps we could have a friendly competition with Fargo to see who can do better in terms of walking. But they're looking at a path that would be on both sides of the river, and so that won't be till September. So hopefully it could be something that we would do in person and not virtually. And then I wanted to give a special shout out to 3 of our Moorhead police officers who were recognized today. So officers Maria Bischoff and Anastasia Hermes will both receive awards for life-saving awards, and Officer Dalton Yago received a Distinguished Service Award. And particularly, I wanted to recognize all of them, but Officer Bischoff, being a MSUM alum, I just wanted to give her a little go Dragon shout out. So, and then lastly, if any of you get an opportunity, I encourage you to watch the screening of a new documentary that Prairie Public Television just created about migrant farmers in the Red River Valley. And Moorhead resident Marta Castañon was one of the contributors to it, and so I thank her for sharing her family's stories, and so we can learn about that rich history in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember White. And I believe Councilmember Lindos, you were up, and then Councilmember Carlson.
I thought Councilmember Carlson was up first.
She corrected me. This is a new format, so I'm having a little bit of time juggling since I'm not at a up top dais, and you know I'm vertically challenged. So.
Not a problem. So I guess just to follow, I had a MetroCog, a policy board meeting that I attended, and it was a great kind of a survey, or not survey, report on visioning, but it highlighted the importance of having our residents participate in surveys that MetroCog sometimes puts out for their planning purposes. So they're doing a 17th Street study right now, and there's other ones. And if you have ideas about, you know, especially transportation ideas, that's something to voice. Because they're really looking at, you know, adopting 25-year type visioning plans for how our roads and stuff will develop into the future. And our roads will change. Our cars and stuff and transportation and trucks are going to shift with technology. So I guess I'm up for the walk challenge. And I have to say the outdoor activation that we have right now is fantastic. The Frostival is going on. If you haven't been by the Yoncombe Center and seen horses and other things taking shape from snow masses, you should, because it's kind of cool to watch people file away at snow and do things that I'm not as versed at doing. You'd end up, if a physicist made a horse, it would basically be just a sphere. And so, but I do want to remind people that the trails, the kudos to Parks and Rec and other people that are doing all the trails, especially the ski paths. And there's, I mean, it does help to get a little snow. The white fluffy stuff is great. But I want to make sure people know to be responsible dog walkers. Make sure you help your dogs because they don't usually clean up after themselves. So help your dogs be good citizens. And if you can, try not to walk actually on either the classic or skate trails. However, if you have the fat bike tire tracks, they love to have you snowshoe on them. So there's a bunch of, I would call it education that even myself can be learn something about ways to enhance the trails for everyone, and that's what we want. The last thing was I just want to do a shout out to the Moorhead Resiliency Project and Concordia's lead in that because it really is something with the food orchard. Is fantastic, but they also provided opportunities, and so I attended a conference, the Minnesota Climate Adaptation Conference. I'd gone to these a while ago, but COVID positive. I was able to attend another one because it's virtual, and so that was last week. And it was really nice. They've moved. I mean, this is put on by the University of Minnesota Water Resource Center and the Minnesota Climate Adaptation Partnership, which is newer. And 10 years ago, when I first went to I think the first one of these, climate change was sort of one of these things that you said, yeah, I don't know if we can say this out loud. And it has moved from insurance companies saying, yeah, you need to address this because it's affecting our rates and our bottom line, to now we're really starting to address and recognize the importance of the intersection of climate on a whole bunch of things that are city. And I should mention, this is not an academic conference. This is a conference that's attended by business owners, city staff, and partners. Trying to get into the nitty gritty of what infrastructural changes do you need to make to your city to be able to adapt to what climate and other situations are going to happen. And so it's a really nice conference to kind of show best practices. I think that's it.
Hey, thank you, Councilmember Lindaus. Really appreciate the updates and the reports. Councilmember Carlson, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to let Councilmember White know that I will be the first one, well, I guess second after Councilmember Lindaus, to sign up for the Alzheimer's Walk team in September. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's the last 5 years of her life, so I'm a very strong supporter of the Alzheimer's Association. Secondly, I'm going to take the acknowledgement that Councilmember White gave to 3 officers just one step farther, and Chris Ratty, if you could put the one picture up. Thank you very much. I think it's very important for us as council members and citizens of Moorhead to recognize the struggle and the challenge that 2020 has been, particularly for our law enforcement officers. And just recognize that they truly put their lives on the line for us every single day. As someone who was married to a former police officer, we are still married, but my husband was he was a former sergeant with the Moorhead Police Department. It is truly something you think about when your spouse is putting on a life-saving vest and carrying a weapon to go to his job every day, and you don't know if that person is going to possibly come back home to you and your family. I think it's important to understand the shoes that our officers walk through every day, and so I wanted to share a little bit about what these officers did to receive this recognition. So on December 22nd, 2020, at approximately 12:30 a.m., Officer Maria Bischoff and Officer Anastasia Hermes overheard an emergency dispatch for a medical involving a female that was not breathing. All Moorhead officers were tied up on other calls for service, with nobody specific for dispatch to assign. Both officers quickly cleared their current calls to respond to the medical assist. Officer Bischoff located the unresponsive female victim in the resident's main entryway and began administering chest compressions. When Officer Hermes arrived, she attached an AED to analyze the heart activity. The AED device advised no shock advised based on the assessment. Officer Hermes began providing chest compressions until additional EMS responders arrived. A pulse was restored on the scene, and the victim was reported to be communicating the following day. The patient is alive today directly because of the immediate and emergent response provided by Officer Bischoff, Officer Hermes, and other first responders from the Moorhead Fire Department and the FN Ambulance Service. If these officers had not prioritized this medical emergency, a significant time delay would have resulted because of icy road conditions slowing other responders. And it was for their actions during the significant medical emergency, both Officer Bischoff and Officer Hermes were recognized by receiving the Moorhead Police Department Life-Saving Award. And this next incident, I think, really illuminates the fear that sometimes spouses and family members experience when their loved ones are going to work. On January 2nd, 2021, shortly after 4 p.m., dispatch received a call that a male had pointed a gun at occupants in another vehicle in South Moorhead. Officer Dalton Yago discovered the suspect vehicle, and before backup arrived, the vehicle turned into a parking lot. Officer Yago attempted to initiate a traffic stop. However, the vehicle continued moving slowly forward. The passenger's door abruptly opened, and a male got out with a sawed-off shotgun in his hands and proceeded to point it in Officer Yago's direction. Officer Yago immediately exited his squad and simultaneously yelled for the suspect to drop his gun while drawing his firearm. The suspect threw the shotgun on the ground and began to run on foot toward an apartment building entrance. Knowing there was another occupant in the vehicle, Officer Yago secured the individual in the vehicle and provided crucial information over his radio to assisting officers. The suspect male was later located inside the apartment building after a search. Officer Yago's ability to remain calm, multitask, and respond to a life-threatening situation one moment and self-de-escalate is a testament to his high level of training and focus. Officer Yago's actions were recognized by receiving the Moorhead Police Department's Distinguished Service Award. To receive this particular award, exceptional courage or brave acts must also display unusual thoroughness, conscientiousness, determination, and initiative. So the pictures on your screen right now, from left to right, are Officer Anastasia Hermes, Officer Maria Bischoff, and Officer Dalton Yago. I also wanted to thank Officer Mike Files on the retirement of his canine dog, Yargo, who became part of the Moorhead Police Department family in 2013. Officer Files and Argo worked every shift together for 7 years. He had done, canine Argo did countless sniffs and tracks for not only our department, but also surrounding agencies. Both he and Officer Files have meticulously trained and won awards during their time together. Police canines bring skills to the department that cannot be matched by their human counterparts. Their noses are so much more powerful and essential in detecting hidden narcotics. Finding articles with human scent and their physical presence helps resolve situations with violent offenders who may be willing to fight with an officer but rarely want to fight with a police dog. He has been a tremendous asset to the Moorhead Police Department and other agencies and will be greatly missed. The picture on your screen right now is a picture of Officer Mike Files with Argo and a beautifully carved shield that was given to him by other area canine units. And I also wanted to send condolences to Sergeant Joe Brannon. His canine Milo recently passed away. These dogs become members of the police department and are integral in the work that they do. So just a shout out to our amazing law enforcement officers at the Moorhead Police Department, and please know you are appreciated every single day.
Thank you, Councilmember Carlson. And I do echo Councilmember Lindas with the appreciation for putting up the photos of our officers. Thank you. Does anyone else have, Councilmember Lindas, is that a new hand or an old hand? Sorry, just want to make sure. Any other council members have anything they wish to add for the good of the order for the report? Hearing none, and I'll be brief, just a brief recap. had the opportunity to speak at the State of the City's 2021 event. It was a different format this year, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But there were a lot of questions, but my hope would be that for next year, we have more of the opportunity to tell more about the stories that impact our cities. So I think that would be good to see some more video type of images to be able to share about the successes that we have accomplished here in Moorhead with the work of city staff, the residents, and also council. I want to send a special shout out to Concordia College, MSUM, and M-State for their MLK Day celebrations and days of learning. Each campus had their own presentation, if you will, and how they celebrated. So I greatly appreciated that. I think, again, with Councilmember Carlson sharing the pictures or the images of our officers that are doing work, this goes hand in hand with Dr. Keene's vision of building a beloved community. And I think Moorhead is by far, but I'm biased to say that we are the best city in the Red River Valley region, primarily because of the fact that we have diversity, we embrace it, and we share stories, and we're engaging in community dialogue. And I think that that's important as a city moving forward into the future, that we honor the traditions that we have here, but also the diversity in which shines in our city. So I think all the residents get a pat on the back for being a part of that. So thank you all for partaking in the celebration for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Also, I want to send a special shout out to Councilmember Carlson. I put her in a weird role because I was unable to attend the coffee with the mayor. So thank you for facilitating that community conversation, which I believe was one of the larger ones that we've had, from what I've heard. I think I heard about 16 folks. So that's pretty good. So it was good to see that growth. I think with that, I don't have any other reports. So I will pass it over to City Manager Dan Molly.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick items here. So as part of the 2021 budget, we budgeted to bring legal services in-house. Moorhead is in a unique place, given the city's success in transitioning its prosecution function into the city. And so of particular benefit to Moorhead is, that work under Cheryl Dyson, who's leading that team. So, as you recall, we had pulled an attorney work group. This is a city council hire. The city council hires the city manager and either enters into an agreement with the city attorney or hires the attorney and things like that. So we had pulled an attorney work group together. I'm suggesting we get together again. We posted in September, October. That was not a great time, frankly, to post for the attorney position, given so many things. So, the plan is, just want to check in here, to in February get together as a group, post. It'll probably be an extended post. I want to express appreciation to City Attorney Shockley for assisting in this. His work in Moorhead over the last 20 or so years is commendable. He's helping us in this transition. There is support to continue working with Onstead Twitchell, whether it's bond services, some real estate work, some work around different sorts of things. So we'll have that kind of mentorship and support going forward. As we do this, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're ready to go, and that work group can maintain and stay the same. Good. I appreciate that. So more on that soon, within the next week. We're going to get going. Thank you. And then as far as Councilmember Lindas had lifted up some of these outdoor activations and finding ways to enjoy all 4 seasons outdoors. So I think we've got 3 of the 4 down. I mean, we do spring, summer, fall pretty well. Winter, we can do a little better. So this year's Frostival it's a 6, rather than a 1-week event, it's a 6-week event. It started on January 16th and it runs till February 27th. We have 6 amazing snow sculptures underway, and then there are some where we ask people not to touch them because we have masters that are working on the piece. We ended up putting a bunch of extra blocks out there so that if families want to work on it, they can touch away. But let's not be sitting. I saw a picture of a boy. Anyway, sitting on a nice dog last year, and I mean, with just hey, please. So they work so hard on it. So, but anyway, want to invite everybody, and then to check out frostival.com for all sorts of events in the Metro until February 27th. So, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Molly. All right. I guess that moves us to agenda item number 21, executive session, and we don't have one this evening. Is there any new business that needs to come before the council this evening? Seeing none. Number 23 on the agenda, are there any citizens that wish to address the council this evening? Madam City Clerk, Mr. City Manager?
We do not have any, Mayor.
None? Okay. Then with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Madam City Clerk, did you get it? And we do have a second.
Lindos will second if no one else does.
All right. Thank you both. Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all, and good night, Moorhead.